Welcome to Teaching Orchestra. There are a few spots in Enchanten that are difficult, and I have some ways to make them easier. So let's just jump right into it. Let's look at measure 100. Here in measure 100, it's awkward because we get a meter change. It's the only 4/4 measure in Enchanten. And we have this really awkward bowing here with a slur across a bar line. Now, do we want to spend hours and hours practicing the syncopated bowing with the second slur across the bar line? Or do we just want to change this bowing and use the extra rehearsal time to work on other things? I want to break the slur across the bar line, which leaves me with a few different options. We can up bow the first two eighth notes, down bow the next two, then break the bowing here, up bow these, down up, and it works out that way. Or we could down bow the first two, up bow the next four, down up, and it'll also work out. I like the first way better, and this is a tricky spot that can be played much easier with just a bowing change. And for me, it's not really worth it to bow it as written. Cameron Law says here on the inside cover page that his bowings are designed to be pedagogically appropriate for specific grade levels while facilitating student musicality and honoring the composer intent. So that's what the string editor Cameron Law says. I don't think that one measure of deviation is worth it for this grade level. And for me, the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. I would rather spend time on the other 118 measures and not agonize over this one. The next tricky spot is measure 47. Getting the outside cello part to play in time could be difficult. We have a divisi part here. The inside players just sustain A. That should be no problem. But the outside player, you're reducing the number of forces. Do you have enough cellos that can come in confidently on the and a one? This note's important too because it's part of this cascade here that ascends. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add an A here for the inside cellos to play. So they'll play A, E, one and. They'll play along with the inside cellists. And what this will do is create a placeholder for beat one so that the and a one should be perfectly in time. After a few rehearsals, I can try and add the rest back in and take out that A for them and see how they do. All right, let's look at measure 33, which contains string crossings from the C string to the G string in the cellos. What I really need here is a strong A. The D is already covered by the basses. They're in unison here. Remember that bass sounds an octave lower than what's written. And the violins are also playing D. I really need this A to come through. And in this measure, the G to come through. And I really need to have them use a lot of finger pressure here. For the open string, it'll probably be fine, but I need to make sure that they add some bow weight when they cross strings. They might go above their mezzo piano marking here. I don't care. I really want to hear these notes because 1 and 2 and 3 and I really want to hear all of the eighth notes on every and of every measure. To get those notes to speak on the G string, they're going to need more weight. That's critical. So getting them to use that bow weight on the slur is really going to help. All right, let's look at 91, at this hocketed figure that we have between second violins, first violins, and cellos. Here we have accents, so these should really come through. Okay, second violins start the melody, then the first violins take it over, and the cellos finish it. They don't have accents. They instead have a slur, and they're marked to be played in second position. You probably want to do this shift. At first glance, you might think, I don't really need to do second position, but they have an E flat, then they have an F, G, A flat. Like they're going to run out of fingers, so you got to do something. I mean, if you play this low one, and you played this third finger and played this fourth finger, this would also have to be fourth finger, and it's better to shift here than to shift here for sure. I guess you could do 1, 2, 3, 4 here, but this gap between low 1 and 2, that's a big stretch. In this section, make sure to have your cellist play closer to the bridge, probably closer to the bridge than the fingerboard. Get their bows closer to the bridge, which will really help here because it makes good tone, especially if they're going to be playing in second position. I know the title of this video is Tricky Spots, but I guess maybe I should think of it as like tricky aspects to Enchanten to include the meter. We're encouraged at the beginning to take Enchanted in a gentle 1, which I agree with, and I will definitely take this in 1 at the concert, but probably not from the first rehearsal. I anticipate that in my first few rehearsals, it's going to be clunky and awkward as my students sight read through this. And as we're building on our technique and we get more comfortable, we can then get them to dance and take it in 1. If you're trying to get this to go into 1 and your students are just not getting it, here's a pro tip. It's easier in 3 because you have control of all 3 beats. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can do the same thing in 1 and have the same control in 1 if you use good technique in your conducting. A common mistake that conductors make is they pull away from the beats and it's unnatural and awkward and it's not clear. And you'll really get punished for it when you're conducting a waltz. This won't take long, but if you practice this in front of a mirror, go slowly out of the beat and quickly down into beat 1. And this isn't my idea, by the way. It comes from the Saeto conducting method, and I studied this a lot in graduate school, but it works really well for waltzes. It works really well for dotted rhythms and for compound time. The key takeaway is to make sure that on beat 3, the tip of your baton is at its peak, okay? 1, 2, 3, still up. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. As you drop into the next beat, you are in control of the tempo. If you come down early, like most conductors do, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you give up your control and then you give that control over to your students. And in my classroom, maybe I'm an egomaniac, but I would rather have control over the beat because I've been playing music since I was 3 and I've been teaching orchestra since before any of them were born, except Timmy, who got held back several times, but we can't help that. And I would like to help them instead of them helping me most of the time. Not all of the time, but most of the time, I'm the one helping them and they're not the ones helping me. So that's how I earn my paycheck, right? The last thing I want to talk about is about measure 119. 119, when I first saw it, I just did a double take. Like I just didn't understand what's going on. We get a double bar here, and I'm like, that's it? This doesn't resolve? This doesn't resolve? What is going on? Like, we start a phrase here, it's got this cascaded thing that we talked about before from the B theme, and then all of a sudden just like stops. What I think of it is like we were asleep and we were having this dream, and then we just woke up in the middle of our dream. And that's how I would interpret this. But what do we want to do with this otherwise? I mean, we could resolve it. We could take our first violins down to a D and our violas up to a D, and then we'd end with like a D minor thing with the F natural here in the second violins and the A in the cellos. If you really want some finality to it, you could just add those notes here and have them sustain. If you're going to play it the way it's written, you need to make it obvious that this was the way the work was intended to be performed and not just that the orchestra made a mistake. Now, the way music works is when you play an older piece poorly, the audience blames the orchestra. But when we play a modern piece poorly, the audience blames the composer. Instead of saying, I didn't like that orchestra, they say, I didn't like that piece. So what do we need to do to make 119 work? Or to add a resolution? To make it work, make sure your students are phrasing just like all the other phrases and grow to the end of the final measure. Then I would do an abrupt release, and in your conducting with both hands, and for them, bows off the string in the air, freeze. And then after a pause, everybody exhales and comes down together. Otherwise, they might think, is that it? Is it over? And, you get that awkward thing where they don't clap and nobody really knows what happened. And that's kind of ruins the performance. And there's not going to be a second chance for this performance, right? The audience probably isn't even likely to hear this piece ever again. So you have to make it obvious and deliberate when you release the last note. Okay, well, those are my thoughts on how to teach Enchanten. And I'm not going to do a common problems video because I haven't heard enough groups yet to hear what the common problems are. So maybe I'll post like a rehearsal at some point so you can see how we're doing with this or something like that. So let me know in the comments if you think that would be interesting, if you like that idea. Until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.